He called me the servant. In the house I built with my own 2 hands. My daughter just watched, silent, clutching her purse. They thought the old carpenter was finished. They were about to find out that I'm much better at taking things apart than I ever was at putting them together. If you're listening to this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. It helps more than you know. My name is John. I'm 70 years old, and until that night, I thought I understood the meaning of family. The smell of sawdust always felt like home. It was the scent of my life. 40 years spent shaping wood, building dreams from the ground up. I ran my thumb over the smooth, polished surface of the mahogany jewelry box I had just finished. It was perfect. The grain flowed like water, and the inlay, a delicate pattern of oak leaves, was the finest work I'd done in years. It was for Emma, my granddaughter. Today was her 20th birthday. 20 years. Impossible. It seemed like yesterday she was a toddler in my workshop, her tiny hands covered in dust, laughing as I showed her how to fit a dovetail joint. I opened the lid. Inside, on the velvet lining, I had carved her initials, ELJ, Emma Lynn Johnson. I stood up, my knees protesting. The body didn't move as quickly as it used to, but my hands were still steady. I left my workshop above the garage and walked across the breezeway into the main house. This house, it was my masterpiece. I built it 25 years ago. My wife, Mary, and I poured the foundation. We raised the walls. Every beam, every cabinet, every inch of trim was a testament to our love. We built it for our daughter Sarah to grow up in, and when she married Mark, they stayed. 5 years ago, Mary passed away. I was grieving, lost without her. Sarah and Mark insisted I move in permanently. "You shouldn't be alone, Dad," Sarah had said. "We have so much space here." At first it felt right. Being close to Emma was a comfort. But slowly, subtly, things began to change. It wasn't one big thing. It was 1,000 little cuts. Mark started climbing the ladder at his investment firm. The money flowed in, and with it came a new attitude, a coldness. He started looking through me, not at me. I remember the first time he called me John instead of Dad. It stung, but I let it go. I told myself I was being too sensitive. I was sanding down my rough edges, trying to fit into their new, polished life. I was just fooling myself. The cracks were already there, hidden beneath the surface, waiting to break wide open. The house was buzzing today, but it wasn't the warm, happy buzz of a family celebration. It was the sharp, stressed energy of a corporate event. I walked into the kitchen, my favorite room, with the solid oak cabinets Mary had designed. Sarah was there, dressed in a sleek black dress that looked uncomfortable. She was barking orders at a catering team setting up for an after-party. An after-party I hadn't been invited to. "Dad, please," she sighed as I entered. She didn't even look at me. Her eyes were fixed on a tray of appetizers. "You're tracking sawdust everywhere. The guests will be here later." They watched us, pretending not to. "John," Mark said, his voice smooth, too smooth. "About tonight, I waited. A cold dread was settling in my stomach. I knew what was coming. I just didn't want to believe it." "What do you mean?" I asked, though my voice was already tight. "The Ivory Tower. It's a very exclusive venue," Mark said, spreading his hands in a gesture of false helplessness. "We finalized the guest list weeks ago. It's a small, intimate dinner." Intimate. That was the word he used to cut me out. "Intimate?" My voice sounded rough, unfamiliar to my own ears. "It's Emma's birthday. I'm her grandfather. I've been at every birthday dinner for 20 years. It's complicated, John," Mark continued. He stepped closer, lowering his voice slightly, as if sharing a secret. "My regional VP, Mr. Harrison, is joining us. We're mixing business with pleasure." He paused, letting the implication hang in the air. "It's an important night for my career, John. A very important night." He didn't say the words, but I heard them loud and clear. "You don't belong. You're an embarrassment. A man who works with his hands, whose suit is 10 years old, will shame me in front of my boss." I felt the blood rush to my face. Shame him? I built the house he lived in. I built the foundation he stood on. I looked at Sarah, my daughter, the little girl I taught to ride a bike, the little girl I held when she scraped her knee. She was staring intently at her purse, fiddling with the clasp, refusing to meet my eyes. She always looked down when she knew she was wrong. "Sarah?" My voice cracked, the sound of a breaking heart. You knew about this? You agreed to this? She flinched, as if I had struck her. Dad, it's just one dinner, she whispered, still looking down. Her knuckles were white on her purse. Mark is paying. It's his decision. It's complicated. It's not complicated, Sarah, I said, my voice low, dangerous. It's cruel. We'll celebrate with you tomorrow, she offered, her voice weak, pathetic. We can order a pizza. A pizza. That was my worth. Leftovers and cheap takeout. The silence stretched. I waited for her to look up, to apologize, to tell Mark he was wrong, to defend me. She didn't. She just stood there, silent, complicit. The betrayal wasn't just the exclusion. It was her silence. That silence cut deeper than any word Mark could say. Emma appeared then. She looked radiant in a blue silk dress. She looked so much like Mary. Her smile faded when she saw the scene in the kitchen. The tension was thick enough to cut with a chisel. Grandpa, she asked, confused. Aren't you ready? You look so handsome. My heart squeezed. Emma, honey, Mark stepped forward quickly, cutting me off. Emma, darling, there's been a slight change of plans. Your grandfather won't be joining us tonight. What? Why not? Emma looked from Mark to Sarah, then to me. Her eyes were wide with confusion and hurt. It's my birthday. Grandpa has to be there. It's an adult dinner, sweetheart, Sarah said quickly, finally looking up, her voice brittle. Business? You understand. No, I don't understand, Emma protested, her voice rising. It's family, Grandpa's family. It's okay, sweetheart, I said, interrupting her. I couldn't let her fight my battles. I couldn't ruin her night. I forced a smile that felt like glass on my face. You go have a wonderful time. Happy birthday. I pulled the jewelry box out of my pocket. The mahogany felt warm in my hand. I held it out to her. I made this for you. Before she could take it, Mark intercepted. His hand closed over mine, pushing the box back toward me. His grip was tight, painful. Gifts later, Emma, he said firmly. His eyes locked on mine. A silent threat. We are late. Mr. Harrison is waiting. Steered her out of the kitchen, his hand firmly on her back, pushing her away from me. She looked back at me over her shoulder, her eyes filled with apology and confusion. But she went. She followed them. They left in a flurry of expensive perfume and forced goodbye. The heavy oak door, the door I had carved myself, shut with a deafening thud. The silence of the house settled around me like a shroud. I stood in the kitchen for a long time. The catering staff resumed their work. They moved around me as if I were a piece of furniture. Invisible. Useless. An obstacle. I walked into the living room. It was immaculate, decorated in shades of gray and silver, cold, just like Mark. It looked like a hotel lobby. No warmth, no life. On the mantelpiece, a beautiful piece of walnut I had spent months carving. There were photos of Mark and Sarah at fancy events, photos of Emma on expensive vacations. There wasn't a single photo of me. There wasn't a single photo of Mary. Mark said they cluttered the space. I looked around the room, my life's work, my legacy, and I realized the truth. I was the clutter now, the unwanted reminder of a past they were trying to erase. I sat down on the expensive sofa. The jewelry box was still clutched in my hand. The hurt, the simmering resentment of the past 5 years, boiled over. The 1,000 little cuts finally bled out, the way they treated me like a live-in handyman rather than a father. Dad, can you fix the leaky faucet? John, the garage door is sticking again. Dad, try not to talk about carpentry at dinner. It's boring. I thought if I just kept my head down, if I just stayed useful, they would remember who I was. They would remember that I loved them. I was wrong. They hadn't forgotten. They just didn't care. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. It was a text message from Sarah. I opened it, desperately hoping, for an apology. A sorry again, Dad. A scrap of kindness. A recognition of my humanity. The message appeared on the screen. The words hit me like a physical blow. Harder than the exclusion. Harder than the pizza. We'll be back later. Bringing the VP and his wife over for drinks after dinner. The caterers left a mess in the kitchen. Please clean it up and make sure the good whiskey glasses are polished. Don't wait up. I read the message once, twice, 3 times. Please clean it up. Polish the glasses. Don't wait up. The words blurred. My hands started to shake. Not with hurt, but with a cold, simmering rage. It was the assumption. The cold, calculated entitlement. The sheer audacity. They hadn't just forgotten me. They had assigned me chores. On the night they celebrated a milestone in our family, I was relegated to the role of the help, the servant in the house I built. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud, angry break. It was a quiet, final realization, a settling of the foundation. The moment the illusion shattered, and the truth was exposed. They expected to find a servant waiting patiently for their return. They were going to find something very different. I stood up. My movements were slow, deliberate. The shaking in my hands stopped. A cold calm washed over me, a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I walked upstairs to Emma's room. It smelled like her perfume, a life I was no longer a part of. I placed the jewelry box on her pillow, a silent testament to the love they had discarded, a silent goodbye. Then I went back to my apartment over the garage, my sanctuary, the only place in the house that still felt like mine. I didn't turn on the light. I sat in the dark for a moment, breathing, thinking. The plan started forming in my mind, cold and sharp, like a blueprint. I opened the closet and pulled out my old, sturdy army duffel bag. I quietly packed my bags, shirts, socks, my shaving kit. As I folded my clothes, the reality of what I was doing hit me. This was the end. 5 years of trying to fit into their lives, into Mark's vision of a perfect family. It was over. I thought about the way Mark would talk over me at dinner, the way Sarah stopped asking for my advice. I remembered the day they remodeled the bathroom. They didn't even consult me. They ripped out the tiles Mary had picked, replaced them with sterile modern marble. It needed an update, Dad, Sarah had said brightly. An update, erasing the past, erasing Mary, erasing me. A wave of doubt washed over me. Was I overreacting? It was just a dinner, just a text message. Maybe they didn't mean it the way it sounded. I looked at the text message again. Polish the glasses. No, I wasn't overreacting. If I stayed, if I cleaned the kitchen and polished the glasses, I would be accepting this new role forever. I would be complicit in my own erasure. I had to leave to save myself, to preserve the dignity I had left. I zipped up the duffel bag. It felt like 70 years of life, reduced to a single bag. But I wasn't just leaving. I was taking something with me, something important. I changed into my old work clothes. Jeans, a flannel shirt, sturdy boots, the clothes I wore when I built this house. My tool belt felt heavy and right around my waist. The weight was familiar, comforting, the hammer, the chisel, the tape measure, tools of the trade. I went back into the main house. I didn't feel like a trespasser. I felt like the owner inspecting his property. I walked to the fireplace in the living room, the gray, sterile living room. I knelt in front of the hearth. I ran my fingers along the bricks, feeling the familiar texture of the mortar. I knew every brick in this house. I laid them myself. I found the brick I was looking for, the 5th one from the left on the bottom row. It looked just like the others. But I had said it differently. A secret only a builder would know. I used a chisel from my belt and carefully worked it loose. It came away easily in my hand. Behind the brick was a hollow space, a secret compartment, and inside that space was a waterproof, fireproof document bag. I pulled it out. My heart pounded in my chest. The adrenaline surged. I opened the bag. Inside was the original deed to the house. The name on the deed was clear: Jonathan Edward Miller and Mary Elizabeth Miller. When Mary Elizabeth Miller. When Mary died, the house became solely mine. I had never transferred the deed to Sarah and Mark. They assumed I would. They talked about it often, hinting that it would make things easier for tax purposes. Mark always talked about taxes. He loved finding loopholes. But Mary had warned me. Before she died, she held my hand, her grip weak but her eyes clear. "Don't give up your independence, John," she had whispered. "They love you, but Mark loves things. He doesn't understand the difference between a house and a home. Make sure they appreciate the value, not just the price." I listened to her. I always listened to Mary. She was the smart one. I had waited. I wanted them to earn it. Not with money, but with respect, with love. They had failed the test. Spectacularly. I held the deed in my hand. The paper felt heavy. This was my power, my leverage. I could confront them when they returned. I could wave the deed in their faces and shout. I could demand the respect I deserved, but that would be messy. Emotional. I didn't want to fight. I wanted a clean break. I wanted to reclaim what was mine, quietly and legally. But then I found something else. Something that turned my sadness into cold, hard rage. The real betrayal was still waiting in the shadows. I replaced the brick and went into Mark's study. The room was cold and sterile. Leather chairs, mahogany desk, awards hanging on the wall, a monument to his ego. I knew where he kept his important documents, in a safe behind a painting of a sailboat. Mark was predictable. He thought he was clever, but he was just a cliché. I opened the safe. I knew the combination. It was Emma's birthday, 10/13/05. He trusted me with the code. Or rather, he thought I was too old, too slow, too stupid to matter. A few years ago, when I had a health scare, I'd given him power of attorney over my finances. He said it was easier for him to manage my bills, to handle the paperwork, to protect my assets. I believed him. I trusted him. He was family. I hadn't checked the accounts in years. I didn't need much. My pension covered my expenses. My retirement savings were for Emma, for her future. I pulled out the bank statements stacked neatly in the safe. I sat down in his leather chair. The leather was cold against my skin. I turned on the desk lamp. I looked at the numbers. My heart stopped. The room started spinning. Which growlers? Hundreds of dollars at a time. Then thousands. Tens of thousands. Transferring money from my retirement account, my life savings, to his own personal account, labeled as loans, expenses, property maintenance, lies, all of it. I flipped through the pages. The dates matched up. The new Mercedes. The trip to Europe last summer, the bathroom remodel, the blood drained from my face. I felt sick, nauseous. The total amount, over $250,000. $250,000. Gone. Stolen. The expensive dinners. The ivory tower. The champagne chilling in the other room for the after party. The Rolex on his wrist. It was all paid for. With my sweat. My blood. My 40 years of hard work. The betrayal was deeper than I ever imagined. They weren't just ashamed of me. They weren't just disrespectful. They were stealing from me. They were vultures, picking at my bones while I was still alive, waiting for me to die so they could take the rest. The house, everything, the realization hit me with the force of a freight train. I felt weak, foolish. How could I have been so blind? So trusting. Despair threatened to crush me. I could just walk away, leave them with the house and the money. Start over. I was old, tired, but then I thought of Mary. I thought of the years we had worked, the sacrifices we had made, the dreams we had built together. I thought of Emma, her future stolen by her own father's greed. I couldn't let them take everything. I couldn't let them win. If this story is keeping you hooked, drop a like. It was that moment, sitting in that cold office, surrounded by the evidence of their betrayal, that the anger finally came. A cold, hard anger that fueled me. It gave me purpose. It clarified everything. They wanted the house. They wanted my money. Fine. They could have the house, the shell, the bones. But they wouldn't have the home I built. They wouldn't have the soul. I walked to the garage. My movements were quick now. Decisive. I dialed a number I hadn't called in a long time. The phone rang 3 times. A gruff voice answered. "Hello? Tom? It's John." Tom was my oldest friend. We started in construction together 40 years ago. He still ran a hauling and demolition business. A man who understood loyalty.
John.
Good to hear from you. How's the retired life treating you? Living the dream with the rich folks? It's over, Tom, I said. My voice was steady, cold as steel. I need your help. Anything, John. You know that. What do you need? I need the big truck, the flatbed, and I need your tools. The heavy-duty ones. Sawzalls, crowbars, the works. Tom paused. I could hear the confusion in his voice. Tools? What are you building at this hour, John? It's almost 9 o'clock. I'm not building, Tom, I said, looking back at the house that was once my masterpiece. I'm taking something apart. Tom didn't ask any more questions. He knew me. He knew when I was serious. He heard the finality in my voice. I'll be there in 30 minutes. I'll bring Mike too. We'll make it quick and quiet. Thanks, Tom. I hung up. 30 minutes. I had work to do. I walked through the house one last time. I looked at the kitchen. Sarah wanted it cleaned. Okay. I would clean it. Thoroughly. I started by clearing out the pantry. The expensive organic snacks. The imported oils. I packed them into boxes. I would donate them to the local shelter tomorrow. Nothing would go to waste. Tom and Mike arrived exactly 30 minutes later. Their truck rumbled in the driveway. A powerful sound from my past. A sound of progress. A sound of change. Tom got out. He was a big man, rough around the edges, but with a heart of gold. His face was etched with concern. Mike, a younger guy who used to work for me, looked around nervously. What's going on, boss? Mike asked, looking at the house. Looks quiet. I explained the situation. The exclusion from the dinner. The text message asking me to polish the glasses. The deed proving the house was mine. And then I showed them the bank statements. The $250,000 stolen from me. Tom swore under his breath. A long, low string of curses. His face turned red with anger. They didn't. Those ungrateful snakes? Stealing from you? After everything you did for them? After you gave them a home? They did, I said. My voice was flat, dead, and now we're taking back what's mine. Everything I built, everything I crafted with my own hands. Where do we start? Tom asked, pulling on his work gloves. The sound of the leather stretching was loud in the silence. The kitchen, we walked inside. The house was silent, eerily silent. Like a tomb, we started with the cabinets. The solid oak cabinets I had built. I remembered the day I installed them. Murray was standing by the door, holding a cup of coffee, smiling at me. She said they were the heart of the home. I pushed the memory away. It hurt too much. We didn't smash anything. We weren't vandals, we were professionals. We were craftsmen. We unscrewed them from the walls. Carefully, methodically. The sound of the drills echoed in the empty house. We disconnected the plumbing under the sink. We capped the water lines. We disconnected the electricity to the outlets. Safety first. Always. We carried the cabinets out one by one. They were heavy, solid wood, built to last a lifetime. We loaded them onto Tom's truck. The kitchen looked strange without them. Bare walls. Exposed pipes. Wires hanging loose. It looked naked, violated. The granite Danner cut were next. They were heavy. Expensive. Mark had insisted on them. Granite is an investment, John, he had said, condescendingly, paid for with my money. We used suction cups and crowbars, lifting them carefully off the base cabinets. It took all three of us to maneuver them out the door. We loaded them onto the truck. It was hard work. My muscles strained. My back ached. I hadn't done heavy lifting like this in years, but it felt good, cathartic. Every screw I turned, every piece of wood I removed, felt like erasing a betrayal, reclaiming a piece of myself, reclaiming my dignity. We moved to the living room, the mantelpiece. The walnut masterpiece. It took me 3 months to carve the intricate details. The oak leaves. Mary's favorite. I remembered Emma tracing the patterns with her little fingers. It's magic, Grandpa, she had whispered. I paused, my hand resting on the smooth wood. A pang of regret shot through me. This was Emma's home, too. Was I destroying her memories? Was I punishing her for her parents' sins? But then I remembered the text message. Polish the glasses. I remembered the stolen money. I remembered the look in Mark's eyes. This wasn't a home anymore. It was a facade, a beautiful lie. We detached the mantelpiece from the fireplace. The wall behind it was empty and cold. The heart of the house, ripped out. Next, the built-in bookshelves in the study. I had built them to hold my collection of architecture books. Books I had collected over a lifetime. Mark had replaced them with his finance awards. Plaques and trophies celebrating his greed. We dismantled them, shelf by shelf, plank by plank. The sound of wood wrenching free from the walls was satisfying. A sound of liberation. Then came the hardest part, the flooring. The custom hardwood flooring in the hallway. Brazilian cherry. I had laid every plank myself, on my hands and knees. It took me weeks. Mary brought me lemonade while I worked. We pulled it up, we used crowbars and hammers. The sound of the wood splintering echoed the sound of my breaking heart. It was a violent sound. A necessary sound. Underneath was the concrete slab, the foundation, the only thing left that was real. We worked for hours. The house was slowly stripped bare. It wasn't destroyed. It was dismantled, deconstructed. It was returned to its original state, a shell, a blank canvas. A neighbor walked by, Sir Henderson. Walking his dog, he saw the activity and the truck. He stopped, peering into the driveway. "John, is that you?" called out. "What's going on?" "Big remodel at this hour." "Something like that, Hank," I said, wiping the sweat from my forehead. "Cleaning house." He nodded, oblivious. "Well, good luck with it. Mark mentioned you guys were planning some updates. Adding a sunroom, I think." "Updates? Yeah, you could call it that." I saw headlights sweep across the driveway. My heart leaped into my throat. Were they back already? It was too early. It was only 11:30. Tom and Mike froze. He quickly turned off the work lights. We stood in the darkness, holding our breath. The sound of the approaching car was loud in the silence. It was just a car turning around in the driveway. It paused for a moment, the headlights sweeping across the empty living room, then drove away. We waited until the sound of the engine faded. The silence returned, heavy with tension. "We have to hurry," Tom said, his voice low, urgent. "They could be back any minute." We worked faster now, fueled by adrenaline and anger. The bathroom vanities, the custom closets in the master bedroom, the crown molding in the dining room, everything I had built, everything that made this house special, everything that added value. It was all loaded onto the truck. It was past midnight. The truck was full. The house was empty. I stood in the center of the living room. It looked smaller now, colder. The echo of our footsteps was loud in the emptiness. It was done. The masterpiece was erased. I made one last call, to my lawyer, David Chen. I woke him up. "John, are you okay? It's past midnight." David's voice was thick with sleep, but instantly alert. He was a good lawyer, a shark when he needed to be. "I'm fine, David. Better than I've been in years. Remember that developer who wanted to buy my house a few years ago? Mr. Rossi, the one who wanted to tear it down and build condos?" "Yes, I remember," David said, the confusion clear in his voice. "You turned him down flat. You said the house was priceless, that it was your legacy." "Well, I've changed my mind," I said, looking at the bare walls, the exposed studs. The legacy was gone. The memories were tainted. The ease is right now. "I'm selling the house. I want the paperwork finalized tonight. Effective immediately." "Tonight? John, that's highly irregular. It takes weeks to close a sale." Rossi offered cash. He said he would close immediately if I ever changed my mind. He wanted the land, not the house. "Call him. Wake him up. Tell him I accept his offer. But the deal has to be signed tonight, before they come home." David was silent for a moment. He knew about the tension in the family. He had warned me about giving Mark power of attorney. He connected the dots. "John, what have you done?" he asked, his voice a mixture of concern and admiration. "I cleaned house, David. Now I need you to take out the trash." I paused. "And David, I need you to start the process of reclaiming the funds stolen from my retirement account by Mark Johnson. $250,000. I have the proof, the bank statements. David whistled low. He actually did it. I warned you, John. I warned you about him. I know. I was a fool, but I'm not anymore. I want him prosecuted. For fraud. For embezzlement. For elder abuse. I want him ruined. Okay, John, David said, his voice hardening. The shark smelling blood in the water. I'm on it. I'll call Rossi. I'll draw up the papers. Meet me at my office in an hour. I hung up. It was done. The final nail in the coffin. I paid Tom and Mike for their help. They tried to refuse. This one was on the house, John, Tom said, clapping me on the shoulder. A pleasure to watch the master at work. No, I insisted. You earned it, thank you. For everything. What are you going to do with all this stuff, John? Tom asked, looking at the truck loaded with the remnants of my life. The cabinets, the flooring, the mantelpiece. Donate it, I said, to Habitat for Humanity. Let someone else build their dreams with it. Someone who appreciates the value of a home, not just the price. Tom smiled. That's the John I know. Always building. They drove away, the rumble of the truck fading into the night. I was alone again, in the silence, in the emptiness. Before I left, I went back into the kitchen. It was spotless. No flour, no boxes, no cabinets, no countertops. It was clean, just like Sarah wanted. I looked at the whiskey glasses Sarah wanted polished. They were still sitting on the sideboard, expensive crystal, sparkling under the recessed lighting, one of the few things I hadn't removed. I felt a sudden urge to smash them, to leave a mark of my anger, to shatter them like they had shattered me. But I resisted. That wasn't who I was. I was a builder, not a destroyer. The emptiness of the house was statement enough. The silence was the loudest scream. I took out a piece of paper and a pen from my workshop. I wrote a short note. My hand was steady. Sarah and Mark, you asked me to clean up. I did. The house is clean. It is also sold. The new owner, Mr. Rossi, takes possession tomorrow morning. You have 24 hours to vacate the premises. My lawyer, David Chen, will contact you regarding the repayment of the $250,000 you stole from my retirement account. Repayment is non-negotiable. Criminal charges have been filed. John, I taped the note to the front door, the heavy oak door I had carved. One last look at my craftsmanship. David had emailed me the eviction notice and a copy of the signed sales agreement. I printed them in Mark's office. I taped them next to the note. Official, legal, final. I locked the door and walked away. I didn't look back. I checked into a hotel downtown. The clerk looked at my work clothes, my tired face, the sawdust in my hair. But she didn't say anything. She just handed me the key. I was exhausted, physically and emotionally drained. I took a long shower. The hot water washed away the sawdust and the sweat and the betrayal. I fell asleep the moment my head hit the pillow. I slept soundly for the first time in years. No tossing and turning. No anxiety. No resentment. Just peace. While I slept, I knew what was happening back at the house on the hill. I could picture it perfectly, like a movie playing in my mind. It was late, past 1 a.m. The expensive Mercedes pulled into the driveway. They were loud, probably a little drunk, laughing, celebrating Mark's success. The successful merger of business and pleasure. Mark was bragging to the VP, Mr. Harrison, and his wife, about the house, about the renovations he was planning, the sunroom, the infinity pool. We have a fantastic carpenter in the family, he would say, gesturing grandly. My father-in-law, the old man, built this place himself. Quality craftsmanship. We're lucky to have him. He handles all the maintenance. Liar, hypocrite. Thief, Sarah would be laughing, basking in the glow of her husband's success. Happy to be part of the elite club. The Ivory Tower Club. Emma would be tired, clutching the jewelry box she found on her pillow, confused and worried, sensing the hollowness of it all. They walked up to the front door. The porch light illuminated their smiling faces. Mark frowned when he saw the notes taped to the door. The eviction notice, the sales agreement, He ripped them off and read him, his face paling under the porch light. The smile vanished, the confusion turning to panic. "What is this?" he muttered, his voice trembling. "A joke? The old man has finally lost it. Sold the house? Stolen money? He's delusional. He can't sell the house. It's our house." He fumbled with the key, his hands shaking. He unlocked the door and pushed it open. The cold air hit them. The house was dark, silent, dead. Mark fumbled for the light switch. The overhead lights flickered on, revealing the devastation. They stepped inside. Their footsteps echoed in the empty hallway. The expensive shoes clicking on the concrete slab. The hardwood flooring was gone. What happened?" Sarah screamed, her voice high-pitched, hysterical. "Where is the floor? Where is everything?" Mr. Harrison and his wife stared in shock, their mouths hanging open. The perfect evening shattered, the perfect facade demolished. They walked into the living room. It was a cavern, empty, stripped bare. The mantelpiece was gone. The bookshelves were gone. The walls were bare, down to the drywall. The studs exposed. It looked like a skeleton. "He took everything," Mark roared, his voice cracking with rage and disbelief. "The cabinets, the flooring, the molding. He dismantled the house. He gutted it." He was frantic, running from room to room, the realization hitting him like a ton of bricks. They rushed into the kitchen. It was a shell, exposed pipes, wires hanging from the ceiling. The granite countertops vanished. The heart of the home ripped out. It looked like a construction site, a demolition zone. The silence was deafening, broken only by Sarah's sobbing. She collapsed onto the dusty concrete floor, her black dress ruined, her perfect life ruined. Mr. Harrison, the VP, the man Mark was so desperate to impress. He looked at Mark with a mixture of disgust and pity. The illusion of success shattered. The man behind the curtain exposed. "Mark," he said coldly, his voice cutting through the silence like a knife. "What is this? What kind of man lives like this? And what is this about stolen money?" "Criminal charges?" Mark stuttered, trying to explain, trying to salvage the situation. "It's a misunderstanding. My father-in-law, he's old, confused. He's not well. He seems perfectly lucid to me," Mr. Harrison said, looking at the eviction notice in Mark's hand. "He sold the house, and he's accusing you of stealing $250,000. He turned to his wife. "I think it's time for us to leave." "This is appalling." They quickly walked out of the house, the sound of their footsteps echoing in the emptiness, leaving Mark and Sarah alone in the ruins of their perfect life. The shock was complete, the humiliation absolute, the silence deafening. The next few weeks were a blur of lawyers and accountants. David handled everything. He was ruthless, efficient. He enjoyed it. The sale of the house went through without a hitch. Mr. Rossi was thrilled. He paid cash, the full amount. He started the demolition a few days later. I didn't watch. I didn't need to. The house was already gone for me. The memories were ashes. Mark tried to fight me. He threatened to sue. He claimed I was mentally incompetent, that I had destroyed his property, that I had vandalized the house. But he had no case. The deed was in my name. The house was mine to sell. The fixtures and fittings, the cabinets, the flooring, the mantelpiece were mine to remove. They were my creations, my property, and the financial theft was documented. The bank statements didn't lie. The power of attorney was revoked. When the extent of Mark's theft became public, the scandal erupted. He lost his job. Mr. Harrison made sure of it. He fired him personally for ethical violations. His reputation was ruined. His career was over. He was facing prison time. Sarah and Mark were forced to move out of the house. They had 24. They packed their belongings, the expensive furniture, the designer clothes, the things they valued, and moved into a small, dingy apartment downtown. They had to sell the Mercedes, the Rolex, everything they had bought with my money. It wasn't enough to cover the debt. The facade they had built crumbled, revealing the emptiness underneath, the hollowness of their lives. Sarah called me every day, leaving tearful voicemails. begging for forgiveness. "I'm so sorry, Dad," she whispered, her voice broken. "I didn't realize how badly we were treating you. I was blind. Caught up in Mark's world? His greed? Please, Dad, please talk to me. I miss you." I listened to the messages. My heart ached for my daughter, my little girl, but I didn't call her back. It was too soon. The wound was still fresh. The betrayal still stung. I needed time to heal, time to rebuild, and she needed time to realize the consequences of her actions. About a month later, I was settled into my new apartment. I had rented a small place overlooking a park. It was quiet, peaceful. I had set up a small workshop in the spare bedroom. The smell of sawdust filled the air again. I was starting over. There was a knock on the door. I opened it and found Emma standing there. She looked older, her eyes tired but clear. Stronger, she was holding the mahogany jewelry box. "Grandpa," she whispered. I pulled her into a hug. We held each other for a long time, the connection between us unbroken, the love untainted. "I'm so sorry, Grandpa," she sobbed, her voice muffled against my shoulder. "I'm so sorry for everything. I should have stood up for you. I should have seen it. I was so blind." "It's okay, sweetheart," I said, stroking her hair. "It wasn't your fault. You were caught in the middle." We sat down and talked for hours. She told me about that night. The shock, the humiliation, the realization of her parents' true colors. "Dad is gone," she said, her voice flat, emotionless. "He left Mom. He's awaiting trial. He blames everyone but himself. He blames you. I expected that," I said sadly. "And Mom?" I asked, cautiously. "Mom is different," she said, shaking her head. "She's working as a waitress now, at a diner downtown. She's realizing how hard it is to build a life from scratch. She's realizing what you gave her." She looked around my small apartment, the simple furniture, the smell of wood, coffee. "It's nice here, Grandpa," she said, smiling softly. "It feels like home, more than the big house ever did." She opened the jewelry box. She traced the oak leaves with her finger. "It's beautiful. Grandma loved oak trees." "I know," I said, smiling. "She did. I understand why you did it, Grandpa," she said, looking at me. Her eyes were full of love and respect. They needed a wake-up call. They needed to understand that a house is not just wood and stone. It's built with love and respect. They forgot that. They forgot you. I looked at her, and I felt a surge of pride. She understood. She was Mary's granddaughter. She had the strength and the wisdom I thought was lost. The legacy continued. I saw Emma often after that. We went for walks in the park. We talked about her studies. She decided to study architecture. "I want to build things, Grandpa," she said, her eyes shining with passion. "Just like you. But I want to build homes, not just houses. Homes with heart." I eventually reconciled with Sarah. It was a long, difficult process. It wasn't easy. There were tears, arguments, silences. She had to rebuild her life from the ground up. She had to learn humility. She had to earn back my trust. But she did, slowly, painfully. She was still my daughter, and I still loved her. The bond between a father and daughter is complicated, but it's strong, stronger than wood and stone. I am 70 years old now. I live a simple life. I have my workshop. I have my family, rebuilt, stronger, more honest, and I have my dignity. One evening, I was sitting on my balcony, watching the sunset. The sky was painted in shades of orange and purple. I thought about the house on the hill. It was gone now, replaced by sterile, modern condos. A monument to progress. I thought about Mary. I missed her every day. But I knew she would be proud of me. Proud that I stood up for myself. Proud that I protected our legacy. I had lost the house I built, but I had found myself. The old carpenter. The man they had dismissed and disrespected. The man they treated like a servant. I had taught the most important lesson of all. Respect is not inherited. It is earned. And sometimes the quietest actions speak the loudest. They thought they had broken me, but in the end, it was their own arrogance, their own greed, that shattered their world. I picked up a piece of wood. The smell of sawdust filled the air. Familiar, comforting. The smell of a new beginning. I am John. I am a carpenter. And I am still building.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your time matters,